Hello, everybody. This is Julie,
I'm Molly.
and we are here for a tangling lesson,
A heartfelt tangling lesson.
heartfelt tangling lesson as part of our Zentangle 20th anniversary celebration.
Woot woot. I feel like I do that all the time.
You do. I like it. So this is February, and February is the month of love, as many people around the world celebrate Valentine's Day. And so we really wanted to do a heart-shaped string.
That's hard to say.
It is hard to say.
Heart-shaped string.
Heart-shaped string. Since our theme for this month is from the heart.
Love it. Love it. And this is something my mom wrote, and I've been like carrying it around with me forever. It's just so lovely.
I was going to say that little piece of paper pops up every February from wherever it's hiding. I don't know where it
came from, but I've like now photographed it and taken. But it's just like, you know, where it's like, I don't know if you could ever replicate it. It's just so special. It's little and special. What are we using today, Julie?
We are using our new 5x5 tiles.
Ooh. These have just been released
Yes.
As a open item. They were a component in our Project Pack 22, and it was a very exciting project pack.
It was so fun.
Yeah, I loved it.
We both just love this tile.
Yeah, it's really fun, and it's a great size. It's on our original 100% cotton paper. It has a beautiful feel for it. Slightly larger than our original tile.
More to love.
More to love. And in the project pack, we use these beautiful pre-strung designs, but we have just released a blank version, which is nice. So if you're interested, on Zentangle.com, you can get your 5x5s. One of the things that was fun when we were designing these tiles is that we created a pre-strung back so that, like, if people wanted to use the blank front side, they could, but if they wanted to play around with this very cool string that has sort of a lot of different options for how you can fill it. You have this beautiful circle, you have these sort of seed shapes, you have options for mosaics, you have these kind of triangular shapes that can appear. And unexpectedly, what else did we find, Julie?
We found a heart.
Oh, it is a heart. I love that. Did not plan that.
No, we didn't.
It just appeered, like it came out and was like, hi, I'm here too. So for this video, we thought we would play around with that beautiful heart. And I'm going to use my pencil line, but I think you all don't need to do that. But I'm just going to use it just to kind of share where it is. So I'm just kind of going around.
And we are working on the 5x5 tiles, but if you don't have these yet, you can work on whatever tiles you have at home. If you're journaling along with us through this year-long celebration, draw some heartstrings right in your journal. But yeah, please follow along with whatever you have.
So there's the heart. Oh, it's really special. I love it. So Julie and I are each going to share a little lesson with you, something a little fun to bring some love to your day. And they're both monotangles, correct? Yeah, yours is yes. And just a nice way to get lost in a tangle for a little bit. So I'm going to be working with a tangle called Zentangle, one of my favorites, actually. It's a really special pattern because it's unexpected, I think, but also so mesmerizing and beautiful. And I'm going to use the crazy version of Zentangle. Our traditional Zentangle is a little bit more metered out with a grid, and this one works with a grid that's a little bit more random. So I'm just going to begin by drawing a series of lines that break up this section where the heart shape is into sort of chaos. Just turning your tile a little bit each time and putting down some really random straight-ish lines if you want to put a little curve to them. And I think it's actually very intentional to make it random. You would think that it's easier to make it random, but in a way you have to think about it more. You have to be like, okay, where can I put this next stroke? I want it to be random, but I also want it to be evenly distributed, if that makes sense. So when you're working with a regular grid, you just like kind of step and repeat, but this is a little bit more random. So take your time, make sure you're, being aware of the heart string there because you want to keep that.
I was going to mention I love how deliberate you're randomly being.
Oh, deliberate randomness. That sounds like a very exact description. Some days it is, my friend. Some days it is. All right, so I think that looks pretty good. I think we have all the strokes I need on here. And like I said, you can always add them if you're turning your tile and you're like, oh, I should put another one here. You can always put that in later, so that's not a big deal. So the next step in Zeppel is that we're going to basically put an orb inside all of these little spaces. But what I invite you to do right now is just let your eyes focus in on one of your spaces. And I welcome you to look at mine first and then look at your own tile and see how you're going to respond to that. But I'm looking at this space right here, and it's sort of like a triangle. And I want to envision that I'm going to stuff a orb into that space, but I'm going to envision that it's like almost too big for it. Like it's barely going to fit. And so it's going to be really snug in there. And here in the United States, we have these toys that kids play with. They're called Nerf. And they're sort of these spongy balls. So I always think of like a Nerf ball that I'm trying to stuff into my little space. So the way I do that is I do want to create the whole orb. So I'm kind of working my way around. I'm tracing over the sort of long parts, and then I'm cutting the corners. So if you can imagine, any sort of a soft ball would get stuffed in here, but it wouldn't go in all the way to the corners. It would just kind of get, or a balloon maybe, would just kind of get misshaped like that. So I'm going to do another one here. I'm looking at this triangular space, and I'm going to maybe take advantage of this little curve here. So kind of curve. And then, so you're really kind of almost avoiding the corners. This beautiful space here. I'm gonna cut the corners, trace the straightaway, cut the corners like so. And you want to look at every space first before you begin and kind of think about how you're going to process it. This one's got more than 3 sides, so I like to start on the straightaway, cut the corner, and then turn your tile. And I like to make sure I almost go all the way around so you're like, their circle looks complete. So you almost trace over that where you began a little bit.
So the first time I saw in Zeppel or learned in Zeppel, it was crazy in Zeppel, and I actually did not know for the longest time that there was a traditional in Zeppel.
Oh, isn't that funny? It was one of the first patterns where I was like, now that is cool. Like, that's a cool pattern. All right, so this is a beautiful way to kind of get into your flow of tangling and just focus on one space at a time. Allow your eyes to settle on that one shape. And then just watch your pen kind of respond to that shape, knowing that you're going to cut the corners. And a lot of times I have my students with this tangle say, well, can't I just like put 3 arcs in the corners? And you can do that. But there's something about like
it's a different look.
Yeah, the thickness that you get by redefining that straight line, and you build this complete shape that really does look like it has tension in it. And I think that it makes the pattern. So I recommend kind of taking your time and drawing the whole shape.
That's a good word. It does have tension.
And you're redefining those previously drawn lines so it brings a little more emphasis, and just definitely, it just matters, shall we say.
I love that.
Oh, thanks, Julie. Came out pretty. I like the way it looks already. Okay, so this is my Inzeppel. It looks good already, but of course we should add some shading to it. And I think Inzeppel is really fun to shade. And so I'm going to start by showing you one of these bigger areas so you can get the handle of it. And if you're not into really detailed shading, you may just choose to put a little shading around the edge of your heart, and that's an option, and that's beautiful, and it'll probably work out quite well. But I'm going to work at shading the individual orbs here, and the way I do that is just putting some graphite here right around the edges, just turning my tile, and as you can see, I have my pencil kind of on its side here. And then with my tortillon, I'm just going to kind of blend that graphite into the center. And you don't have to put too much graphite down. Kind of a little goes a long way. And then you really want to leave that middle part unshaded. And I really kind of lift up my pressure on the tortillon for that middle. Seriously, that's just so pretty and so simple.
So simple, but it makes such an impact on it.
Right? Love it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that to each one of these shapes. And if you're shading in this way, I invite you to do that. And if you figured out a different way to shade, then go forward with that. This is just like sort of one option for you to play around with, but it's definitely not the only option. And maybe you try it out on like another piece of paper to be like, let me just test it out, see how I like that. So definitely leaving that middle part with the highlight is what kind of makes it look like a rock or a kind of a something that's like special that you're putting all in there. It no longer looks like a Nerf ball. It's something else. So I'm going to go ahead and shade all of these beautiful little orbs. Okay, Julie. So we, or I, have gone through every single one of these beautiful little orby shapes and put in my shading, as you can see. And then I did take a minute to like put an added layer, and I'm going to put a little more here. I went around the edges and just added a real dark bit of graphite to sort of create this sort of dimensional effect. So it's like,
I love it.
Yeah, I like it too. And so I shaded the individual components, and then I worked with the heart shape itself, and it really did come together. So that is fun too. And take your time. Like this kind of shading takes a lot of time. So
and you add it in layers.
You do, yeah. So, and like we said, there's so many different ways that you can shade this. So if you want to explore this version, you can. If not, fool around with something that's completely yours, and that's fine too. And of course, at the end, you want to add your chop. So make sure that you're marking your artwork and have fun with it.
I love it.
You ready to share something, Julie?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right.
So Julie here, and we are again working on the back side of one of these 5x5 tiles. And I'm going to do the same thing that Molly did and just lightly trace my heart. Just kind of isolate where we're going to be working today. And I am going to be doing another mono tangle, and I'm going to be doing Tripoli today. And I'm working with the Micron 05 black. And I love this tangle because it's so versatile and there's so many different things that you can do with it. And I'm going to start with Tripoli in the middle of my heart, kind of big, and as we get closer to the sides, I'm going to start to get a little smaller. So you just want to keep that in mind as you begin to put down your triply triangles. And when I draw triply, I don't like to do straight lines, so they're all going to be kind of curvy and wonky, and maybe not.
I was noticing that about your Tripoli. I love that you add like a little curve to it, so it adds movement, really. It's
movement
nice.
too. Yeah, I find these straight lines to be a little too rigid for my personal taste.
You love curves, don't you?
So, to begin, I'm going to draw a line in the middle of my space and create a 3-sided shape. And then I'm going to aura one side of that shape and create a second 3-sided shape. And again, aura.
And watch how she's like really responding to that other line. Her aura mimics it in a way that makes it feel like they belong together.
Pieces of a puzzle.
And remember to pay attention to that heartstring because it's easy to get kind of caught up in your process. So if it was, if you really needed to put it down darker or pause in between each one. And if you go over the heartstring, just decide to cover the whole tile.
And now that I have those bigger 3-sided shapes down, I'm going to start to make them a little smaller. So I'm still auraing the original line, but maybe make them a little bit smaller. Like Molly said, my string line's right here, so I'm going to squeeze one right there, right up against the edge. Each space dictated by the one drawn before it.
And I think the different size triangles really make the pattern. It's not so like perfect. It's like almost like it has dimension to it.
Yes. So I'm going to continue to fill my space with my 3-sided shapes. So now that I have all of my 3-sided shapes down,
it's actually really beautiful as is.
It is.
Yeah, I like
and there's
it.
some fun shading you could do to really accentuate this. But I'm not done yet.
Okay.
So I'm still working with my 05. I'm going to go into each individual little shape. And I'm going to start at one corner. And I'm going to draw a small arc that goes to the next corner. Turn my tile. And do the same thing. And then again, small arc. And then, much like Molly did with Inzepple, I'm going to smush a small orb into the middle of that shape. And I'm going to do this to each one of my 3-sided shapes. Taking your time, turning your tile.
This tangle really like transforms like as you're working on it, which is exciting.
And you can fill it so many different ways. So if you're inspired to fill your shape with something else, please do so.
And also like the order you do it in, like you could do all your arcs and then come back and do all your orbs, or if you like to fill the whole shape, and then so there's different ways to kind of process it.
And I find I do it like a little differently every time I draw Tripoli. Sometimes I draw each shape like as its own, like from start to finish, and then move on to the next one. Sometimes I do it in steps like I am today. It's funny how, without even thinking about it much, you change the way you do things. And so I'm just going to fill each shape inside my heart. So I've filled all my Tripoli.
Looks great, Julie.
I know, I love it. I love how it's just the character and the shape it's taken on. So now I'm going to start shading, and I'm going to shade each one of these individually, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. I'm going to start in the corner of each of my shapes, and I'm going to add a little graphite inside each of these little, what would you call these little
Pods?
pods? Yeah, these little pod shapes. And then I'm going to spread it out. I'm not going to shade the entire pod shape. I want to leave a little bit of highlight in the middle there. But bringing that graphite almost meeting. And then I'm going to pick up a white charcoal pencil, and I'm just going to accentuate that highlight.
Oh, I like that, Julie.
You can almost barely notice it,
but definitely changes it.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to do the same thing on each of them.
Sometimes when you're working on with that white charcoal, you don't even need a tortillon because you can kind of use the pencil itself to kind of blend it in.
And again, just shading each one, no matter how big or small. And there's lots of different other ways you could keep adding detail here. Sometimes I'll fill in these little spaces with black ink. That makes it really dramatic. I think I wanted to leave it a little bit more light and airy today.
Yeah, I'm kind of, I usually ink in that part too, but I think I like it for certain situations like without it. So, especially with all the shading, it's like popping.
So I'm going to go ahead and keep shading each of these spaces. And I invite you all to do the same. And there we are. I love that.
Looks beautiful, Julie. And I actually am feeling inspired by variations on this too.
I know.
I'm just actually thinking of it.
Your mind starts moving of all different things you can do. I love how the shading the corners makes those
a little darker.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So of course we want to add our chop. I'm going to do mine in a little heart today.
Nice. Super special.
Yeah.
Oh, I love these.
I do too. Monotangles are so fun. Sometimes I feel like they don't get the love they deserve.
Oh, I'm a big monotangle fan for sure. Yeah, I love it.
So we have some other tiles here, don't we?
We do. So, of course, this is the one we did with you earlier, and then this was one that I played around beforehand and added a little bit of red to. That was just like a little love.
Oh, that's so fun. You can see how the difference between adding the graphite around the heart and not adding it, both really cool and beautiful, just different looks.
Yeah, I love it.
I love that.
And this is one my mom did earlier this week. Amazing, of course. Yeah, really beautiful.
All the muka.
Yeah, lots of muka. And I think what's really cool about what she did, and I think maybe people might explore this, is she didn't trace over the string lines, but she used them as a way to do some coffering.
Yeah.
And so you can see the other string line, which becomes sort of this like gray back, like you can see it as part of it, but it's part of the pattern in this grayness, and then the coffering, and then doing the muka like a window or something. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like just
a window into her heart.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. So thanks really for that, Mom. So thank you everyone for joining us. And if you want to try some of these tangles we did, and if you maybe want to sample out your own, enjoy it. Try out the 5x5s. They're fun. And we're excited to see what you all are creating on them.
Yes, thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you, Molly.
Bye.
Bye.